G'day there. This is once again the world where we live. Thank you for joining us. And we have just put ourselves through hell trying to sort all of the technical aspects of this rubbish. So let's start the third leaders debate. We're going to have a lot of fun. Sorry, we're a little bit crowded. We got a couple of guys from the Opportunities Party. Well, it's the only video we could find. They weren't up yet, even though they had the debate last night.
That's okay.
So,
I will take the opportunity to have a go at the Opportunities Party as well. It's an open opportunity.
absolutely. Let's begin.
Right, let's do this.
By virtue of a coin toss, Judith Collins will be opening the debate by giving us a 2-minute statement. That means that Jacinda Ardern will conclude the debate in the closing statements at the end. Ms. Collins, welcome. Your 2 minutes begin now.
Thank you. First, can I start by acknowledging Ngāi Tahu? Can I also acknowledge the people of Lake Oahu, who at the moment are going through very difficult times? I'd like to acknowledge the press and obviously all those people who are here tonight. I'd also like to acknowledge the other MPs, and particularly Ms. Ardern. And I'd also like to acknowledge Jerry Brownlee, because I know he and the press have got such a close relationship. I've said to Jerry, no more public displays of affection, please, Jerry. But all joking aside, this is the most important election that we will ever face. It is an election where we decide not what's going to happen in the next few days, not what's going to happen in the next 3 months, but what's going to happen in the next 3 years. And the most important issue for this election is about the economic recovery for New Zealand. New Zealand's not unlike every other part of the world. We're all going through tough times, but we're a small economy and we have to try harder than everyone else. And everyone in Canterbury knows about having to try hard. You've been through tough times, there are still tough times, and I'm not going to call you resilient because you're sick of being told it. You just want to get on. It is really important that we vote for a government that has a plan to build our economy. And there's a plan around tax cuts for people in the average wages, people who get $3,000 for $64,000 income. It's really important that we grow the economy with that, an adrenaline pump into the heart of the economy. But it's also important to build infrastructure for our children and grandchildren.
Whether it's the quality of that spending is good.
Pegasus bypass to Belfast, whether or not that happens, whether it's the Ashburton Road, the 4-laning, whether or not that happens is going to depend on which government is in place. Our government has a plan for it. Our party has a plan for it. We need to build for the future, not to look back at the past.
My word, did we just hear a statement? Got to be watching the American debates and not a single interruption.
Yeah.
My goodness, isn't that fantastic?
That was pretty good on all sides. I don't know. She stumbled a little bit over this whole tax cuts for the middle income in New Zealanders. She said this many times before. Like, why is she stumbling now? Is she under particular pressure today? I don't know.
Well, if there's one thing the National Party do have, it's their love of infrastructure. They did plan to build those roads of national significance, which Labour cancelled, much to the chagrin of many people living especially in Northland. But we will continue.
Any surprises in there, Matthew?
No, none.
Not even one.
Tax cuts, roads.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judith Collins.
National.
Jacinda Ardern.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou, and it is wonderful to be here in this beautiful town hall. I bet it feels like a global pandemic was the last thing Canterbury needed. You've had your fair share of challenges, whether it was in the face of disaster or in the face of terror. You have shown the rest of the country what strength and what unity looks like. And we've learnt from that. And we need to use that now in the wake of COVID-19 and in our rebuild. But there are lessons that must be learnt too. The quake rebuild here took too long, and there is still more to do. My government took quick and decisive action when it came to COVID-19. We went hard and early in our health response because we knew that would be good for the economy too. We saved jobs, we saved businesses through the wage subsidy. Now, I'm not claiming...
No, you didn't. You delayed the inevitable economic collapse that you are directly responsible for causing.
the Canterbury rebuild wasn't made fast enough. In fact, it was actually made excessively. The National Party built Christchurch back up with the expectation that the people who had been departed after the earthquakes would return, and unfortunately they never did. It's actually they actually have some of the lowest house prices in the country because they simply have more supply than demand.
Perfection. But you only need to look at the rest of the world to see how that plan has stacked up and what a difference it's made. And our collective efforts have meant that we now have an economic head start. Our economy is growing again already. We're seeing our exporters posting strong results.
By growing, do you mean the biggest downturn we've seen in our lifetimes?
And just as we did with the rebuild here, there will be opportunities that we need to grasp hold of. We need to apply the same thinking now, getting both immediate and short-term gains whilst also planning for the future and getting wins for the environment, getting wins for our communities at the same time. We mustn't squander hard-won gains. Now, I'll say it directly. A change of course and instability risks the progress that we are making right now. You've seen up close how I operate as a government. It's about jobs, it's about training. These are all things that are proudly happening right here in Canterbury. I'm looking forward to talking in more detail about the rest of that plan tonight.
Jacinda looks less composed than Judith.
No other comments there? Okay.
Jacinda Ardern, I'd like to take you back to January, when COVID was still a largely unknown disease in a land far away. What would you do differently if you knew then what you know now?
I think every leader around the world would have something that they would have moved earlier on, knowing what we know now. But even then, Luke, relative to others, we were amongst the first to close our borders, amongst the first to use quarantine in the way we did. And moving fast and early, going hard and early, has led to other countries reflecting on what we have collectively done. So probably sliding those things a bit earlier would be my response to that. But ultimately, though...
Hey, look, I'll give her this. At least she's admitting she could have done things a little bit sooner. Okay, fair cop. And I really hate this hindsight stuff. Like, decisions were made at the time, based on information that was available at the time. That's just the way it is. I'm not prepared to punish Jacinda for hindsight.
Certainly not. And I guess the main reason why COVID didn't run rampant in New Zealand was because of the vast geographical distances involved and our lack of contact with the countries where COVID had spread fast. The government did do a good job in locking us down and getting it under control at level 4. It remains to be seen whether they can fix the vast damage they did to the economy while doing so, which, contrary to what the Prime Minister was saying just before, we are not bouncing back from that in any conceivable way. It actually did an enormous amount of damage, and if you look at the business predictions, past all the spin, they reckon that the worst is still yet to come. We'll see it right after Christmas, when it becomes blatantly obvious that the usual Christmas New Year spike is not going to make up for that lost amount of trade. Let's keep going.
I'm proud of our response to COVID-19. It means that we can all gather here in the town hall tonight.
We're not all dead.
Judith Collins, what should the government have done differently?
Well, in February, we were calling for the borders to be considered to be closed. It actually took another month for that to happen. And at the time when we were asking for this and talking about COVID-19, we were told that we were scaremongering. We were told that we were scaremongering, and we had David Clark, the then Minister of Health, coming out saying in Parliament that all we needed to really do is to think about hygiene and sneezing into our elbows. We raised those questions then. We raised issues about masks. We raised issues about what was going to happen, because we had seen what was going on, particularly in Wuhan in China. And actually, we didn't go fast and hard and early. Samoa went a month earlier than
That
us.
is
Other
actually-
countries,
that is
Samoa
factually-
did so go.
that is factually
No,
correct.
it did so. And actually, don't disrespect Samoa. They did it. They
Keep shot, Judith.
kept it out. They kept it out. They
Jacinda
kept
Ardern, would you like-
COVID-19 out, and they've kept it out. And by the way, they test anybody who wants to get on a plane to go there, and we have not done that. Actually, I don't take kindly to people disrespecting the hard work of the Samoans. They had to take it seriously because
Thank you, Judith. Jacinda Ardern, would you like to respond
Definitely race
Absolute
baiting.
race
Stop
baiting.
that,
That's
Judith.
ridiculous.
to that?
Yes, I would. Look, actually, when it comes to our Pacific neighbours, we've worked hand in glove as a region. But actually, the point, Luke, I wanted to make was this is directly contrary. What I'm hearing from Judith tonight is directly contrary to their criticism that we should have opened the borders to Australia and China early, that we
did
should have
not.
lifted our restrictions
We did.
early. We have been criticised
did
by the
not.
National Party every step of the way for our COVID response. Now, when you are in a pandemic, you cannot afford to change your mind every 5 minutes. Every leader we've had from National has had a different position, and it's been wrong.
Agree with Jacinda.
And absolutely, it's absolutely going to play to a lot of the Labor support base, because in the midst of those lockdowns, criticism of the government was the last thing that was on their minds. Just so happened, I mean, some people see it as being a prelude to a communist or authoritarian takeover, but really it's just coincidental that the best ways to fight a deadly virus is to lock down, stay in your homes, let the government have an enormous amount of control over the citizens temporarily, hopefully.
Never temporary with government, though. That's the problem. And Jacinda legitimately is a communist.
That said, National have fallen into the exact same trap as Labor were in for 9 years, whereby they would criticise the hell out of the opposition, out of the government, as the opposition at the government, without providing any meaningful solution. And it's very sad to see that their wealth of expertise and MPs have fallen into the exact same trap now.
If Miss Ardern would like to go back and have a look at what was said, it was nothing like what she's just said. It is actually really serious to understand this, is that our country is facing the worst economic times in 160 years, and that's according to the Reserve Bank governor. So he has said that. And we've got this sort of silly talk about who said what when. I can tell you this. We can't continue to go down a path of having no proper plan for the border, which we have from Miss Ardern's party, except that they want to keep it shut. Unless, of course, you're an Australian rugby player, in which case they can sort it out then for you.
I'm look-
I don't think you can say that, Judith. There was a lot of complaints about them not doing that, and then I responded to the public opinion. Like, I get your point, but that was a public opinion thing as well. So, you know, you'd probably do the same thing, to be honest. That's hypocritical, I think.
looking forward to the stuff fact
We've
checkers
actually
coming
gone
in on
around the country
conversation.
and asked stuff readers
Especially
what
the
they care about in this
First section
space.
on COVID.
And now we'll play
A
you
lot
the
of bold
first
claims
of
being
those
made.
questions.
Hi, my name is Suchi and I'm a business retailer in Ponsonby, Auckland. In total, Auckland has been in lockdown for almost 10 weeks, level 4 and then level 3. At what point do these lockdowns become unfeasible?
Good question.
And I think the answer to that from an economic perspective is that no reasonable amount of lockdown was feasible. There were some I recall some very insensitive comments made by one particular Labor MP, her name escapes me, that, oh, if the business is going to go under because of COVID, it would have gone under anyway. Just goes to show how very out of touch not just the Labor politicians, but many politicians are with running a business.
At what point do further lockdowns become unfeasible?
Oh, well, ultimately, though, without them, then we would be living with COVID-19. And that
It's going to happen anyway, and it doesn't kill anyone.
equally, if you look around the world, would mean hospitality closed, people working from home for months on end. It would mean retail, not seeing people in their stores. So we have to remember the counterfactual is much, much worse. We don't want to use lockdowns any more than is absolutely necessary.
Liar.
To keep people safe and to reopen the economy. We have had roughly 9 weeks worth. We've had 22 weeks of wage subsidy to support small business owners. What we need to do though, Luke, is continue to roll out a plan that means we have the open economy we have now compared to the likes
Come on, Judith, you got to punish her on that one. She doesn't have a bloody plan.
of France and
Oh, come on. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous.
No, it's just reinventing history. The fact is that the lockdown should not have been necessary if people had been tested, as we were told. That second lockdown that we had, which locked down even the South Island into level 2, totally unnecessary. If the testing that Ms. Ardern told us on the 23rd of June was happening to all border-facing staff, turned out 2 months later, actually only a third of them had been tested.
Now, Judith Collins brought this up in the previous debate, and you have to give her a point for this. She's absolutely right. It was negligence at the border, which was completely unbecoming of a government who had promised to go hard and go early, and presumably to keep pressing our advantage. They did not. The limitations of being kind and compassionate above all else.
It was a failure of border protection that caused that lockdown, and I'm not going to have Miss Ardern stand there and just reinvent history. That's the point. And as for lockdowns, weren't necessary in Taiwan. Why? 23 million people, because they tested, because they did exactly what they said they were going to do, because they used Bluetooth technology, because they actually take it seriously. And then to let people come in on planes with COVID-19, that is disgraceful. It's still happening today.
While that's correct, she's missing the fact that Taiwan in particular learned its lesson from the SARS epidemic. They are inherently distrustful of the Chinese, who are continually trying to assert their dominance over their country. And that has, well, had just as much to do with trying to keep COVID out as anything else they enacted.
Don't trust the communists.
Exactly.
The idea that somehow returning New Zealanders will come back into this country completely free of COVID-19 is a dreamland. Of course, New Zealand
Wasn't just returning Kiwis, though,
No.
was it?
Absolutely.
Right. Lying again.
is coming in. That is why we have a quarantine system and one of the most robust in the world.
And why aren't they
It
paying
is
for it?
completely incorrect. It is completely incorrect to say that there was a failure that led to that outbreak.
Well, where did it
We
come
have
from?
never
Under your,
been-
in a rock in your garden?
We have never been
Come
able
on,
to
came on a
identify the
plane.
source. And if I may finish on this, Luke, according to Judith, putting Jerry Brownlee in charge of the border is the answer.
Well, it's better
I know
than
people
putting,
in this room
it's
believe
better
that it's
than
not
putting-
true.
hey, it's a lot better than putting David Clark in charge of health and then
Nah, sorry, Judith. You missed your time for a retort. Move on.
sending her on holiday for 2 months during a pandemic.
We'll move on to more of the economic response now.
Judith is an alpha female. She has to fight back. all the
Go,
time.
Judith!
Now, Jacinda Ardern, in your COVID response, your government has really taken a government-led approach. Shovel-ready projects, big government spending response. National has decided that the best economic stimulus is tax cuts. Why is your approach better?
Because obviously investing in infrastructure creates jobs, but
No, it doesn't.
that's not the only approach. We want to support our exporters as well. Already we're seeing an export-led recovery. Dairy, kiwi fruit,
Oh, now you like
wine.
dairy.
Very good. Now you like dairy. They are trying, with the help of the Greens, they are, if anything, regulating dairy and fishing and agriculture out of business.
I just saw an article today, I think it was on Stuff, that said basically they did a big study from one of the universities, and farmers in New Zealand are almost carbon neutral, as in they sequester 90% of the emissions that they make from their farming activities in the forests and grass and woodlands and things that they have on their properties. 90%.
So you make it unfeasible in New Zealand, the Chinese will do it, it'll be less sustainable, they'll pick up the slack, and you won't help the environment.
The communists want you, all the people that vote on the left, live in cities. The cities are where the pollution is happening, not in the rural areas. And they want you to look over here, while they point the finger at all the farmers. Well, they are the ones that are causing the problem in the first place. And this goes for people living in cities.
So don't buy smartphones and new clothes every couple of years because they're not made sustainably.
All doing well. And at the same time, Luke, supporting our small businesses. There are digital vouchers that give them funding to continue the technological advancement we've already seen. The small business loan scheme, R&D tax credit, this all supports innovation and growth. That's the kind of investment we need right now. A tax cut is an unaffordable sugar hit that is just not right for these times.
Judith Collins, why tax cuts?
Because people need it, actually, and it is for 16 months. It is absolutely needed. We need people to be out stimulating the economy. We also need
There are many ways
businesses
to do that,
to be able
Judith.
to buy better equipment, plant and equipment, and to be able to get that in place and written off as fast as they can, because that will encourage them to employ people. We also have Job Start, we have Business Start, we also have Skill Start. It's about getting people back into work. And as for the infrastructure, yeah, we'll do the infrastructure, and that's part of the plan. And that's part of why we need to have a national-led government, because it's not just government doing things. I'll tell you what we won't be doing. We won't be funding, if I got a chance, but unfortunately Ms Ardern's government's gone and signed off. We would never have agreed to a green school, private school in New Plymouth, while we've got state schools suffering and a green school for kids whose parents are paying $20,000 a year. Actually, those people deserve an apology.
Let's come to services then. Let's come to health. Let's come to education and have that discussion.
Let's do
because
that.
I
Let's talk about
absolutely
education and
fail
buildings.
to see.
4.8 billion.
I fail to see how in the National Fiscal Plan, which has left how much, Judith, is in your operating allowance for health, for education next year.
Hey, at least we've got a plan.
That is a dangerous debate tactic, to turn around and give your opponent an open-ended question. Ballsy, Jacinda.
How much?
It's an extra one. It's 800 million. 800 million above it. And actually, I know mine off.
And that's the
I've actually
answer.
got a plan.
800 million. We had to put 900 million into our DHBs alone to keep the lights on.
Well, why did you?
What will be cut?
Why did you
That's
get rid of the
everyone
chief
deserves to
executive
know.
of?
I almost get the feeling that the strategy for this sort of debate, for both of them, is to try and ask a very forceful, open-ended question, because it'll get their supporters to start cheering, and they won't even listen to the response. It's just a boom, gotcha moment. And that's really all that matters. It's winning the internet. It's the memes rather than the substance.
Soundbite. It's Twitter. It's 120 characters or less.
Yeah.
What we actually need is Joe Rogan.
So they'll get some meme of Jacinda saying that massive open-ended question. They won't remember what Judith said. And then right next to it will be a photo of Judith looking very unflattering. And hey, if that gets 100,000
They're
views.
both as bad as each other. National does it with the National Party meme working group. I assume Labour has something the same.
It's called backing the Kiwi meme.
Oh, God. Yeah, there you go.
What will be cut?
We'll come to that.
We'll come to that. There's plenty of time.
Good answer.
I'm
Only
sure
you
the
were
people
at that
Canada will
lectern,
appreciate
Matthew.
there's plenty of time to get to DHBs.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Now, coming on to your particular government's budget approach over
Judith
COVID.
wins in the face.
Now, Jacinda Ardern, your government voted itself 52 billion to deal with COVID, at least 14 billion of which has not been spent, set aside for future COVID-related matter.
Right.
Now, that money's been set aside for no one really knows at the moment. It's been approved. You don't know how it'll be spent. Is that really budgeting?
Absolutely. Our plan is if it's not needed for the recovery or the rebuild, we pay down debt. What we've already seen, Luke, is if we have resurgence, we need to keep supporting our small businesses. We had 1.7 million jobs saved through the wage subsidy. Now, no one wants extra cases. No one wants that scenario, but we have to prepare. We have to have it ready and available. Unfortunately, the National Party is suggesting spending all of it. That is not wise when you're in the middle of a global pandemic and you need it for recovery.
Well, it's actually all borrowed money, isn't it? That's the thing, it's all borrowed money. So we're borrowing money to go and put it there and say one day we might need it. How about we borrow it if we need it? One of the other things to point out is that wage subsidy that Ms Ardern wants to talk about a lot, that's costing us $500 million a week. That's the same cost as the Canterbury and the new hospital in Christchurch. That's how much it costs. And that's been going on. We've now got spent, or her government has spent, there's enough money for 50 new hospitals on the wage subsidy. And I'm happy to support a wage subsidy, but it has to come to an end.
And your
That
$8 million
means you need a
hole
plane
is
to get
8
off that.
hospitals
And
that we
actually,
still can't
Ms
account for.
Ardern, you're going to talk about that. It's not 8. And the other thing is, all it means is that we have an extra year to get back into a very good level of debt. Let's
On the
talk
budget
about,
hole, Stuff calculated that it is in fact an $8 billion budget.
well, you're wrong.
Now,
Sorry, you're
why
wrong.
should?
You're wrong.
I'm happy to.
So here you go, Mrs. Trump arguing with the moderators. But on top of that, I have to point out that, so yes, it's costing $5 million a week. Well, it's an awful lot of money that could have been used to fund St. John Ambulance.
$500 million a week.
500 million.
And do you know if that stuff actually fact-checked it? Then is it an $8 billion hole?
Well, they're obviously
know.
not fact-checking during the debate, except when they
True.
are.
I don't know where he's quoting this from.
Argue the toss with you.
Well, I'm happy to give you the letter from the independent.
My point is, $4 billion has been admitted to. Why should the country trust you as an economic manager when you can't make the books?
Because when there was an error, it was admitted to. And that's something better than Miss Ardern's. Miss Ardern didn't even have a plan. And when she put out a pamphlet, what did it have in it? Another error. But it was, in that case, it was
also
what was it then?
Also,
It also
absolutely
didn't have-
incorrect.
It didn't have anything to do with, oh no. the
Ours
cost of-
adds up, and there is not
No.
a hole in it amounting to $8 billion.
No, it's worse
And
than
we
that. It's
still
over
do
10.
not know.
It's
We
over
still do not know from what National has proposed around their debt reduction plan what will be cut. We
We
still
don't
do
need to
not have
cut
an
anything.
answer on what will be cut for the $8 billion.
There's nothing to
What
be
will
cut.
be
I tell you what we cut. All the bullshit special interest projects that you keep funding to the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. There's a list on the bloody taxpayers union. Go and look it up. It's ridiculous.
And really, that is the way forward. I'm sorry to say, we depend too much on government. And if we want to cut down the borrowing and we want to slash the debt, we will need to cut services. Well, I'm not surprised they don't have a specific list because there are so many rubbish government services that we don't bloody well need that could be cut. It could take months and months and months to sift through all of them. But really, that's the only way we're going to do it.
Look at the taxpayers union. They have a very good list of these things. I think I saw one today. It was $49,000 or something in that realm for a glitter garden.
And speak up, you two top people. We haven't been able to fact check
I'm
anything.
actually really glad they're not talking. This is very good for us. I thought they were going to interject all the time.
Too crowded.
It's
cut
not
because
8
of
billion,
the
it's 4 billion.
inadequate
And by the
operating
way, we've
allowance.
taken it into
And
account
what will
for
be
next
cut
year.
as a result of the debt
Well,
reduction
would
plan.
you like me to answer? I'll tell you
Please,
what we'll
by
answer.
all means.
Okay, right. We don't have to cut anything because we just take an extra year to pay back that
It
debt.
does not
But what
add up.
it does, but what is missing from Ms Ardern's plan, since she brought it up, her fiscal plan, is the cost of light rail in Auckland. That's not even there.
Also
Now, Winston Peters
incorrect.
says that's $15 billion. Other estimates are $6 billion. Which one is it, Ms Ardern? Which
It's
one?
out.
also
Quick response,
incorrect.
please.
Which one?
Seat
Which one?
funding of $1.8
Sorry, Judith. Very poor point.
billion
Yes,
is already being accounted
and
for.
then what?
And if I may answer the question, based on the logic,
This is more what you'd expect in the schoolyard at Barradine College than with a couple of adults who are in politics.
I love
One of
Judith's-
which is leading the
I
country.
just love Judith's freeze frame face right now.
Oh, it's a great movie, isn't it?
based on the logic presented by the National Party,
Where's the rest of it?
where is the $10 billion for the Harbour Bridge?
Oh, that's
This is
for
not
another-
a
that's
logical
not for
accounting
another 20
argument
years.
that's
Come
been
on.
made, which is why we haven't levelled it.
That doesn't
We
start
have
till
followed exactly the
2028.
principles
Come
of
on.
the Treasury. Our plan adds up. Nationals does not.
No?
All right, we'll move on to tourism.
How? Yeah. Okay, move on to it.
So tourism has been smashed by COVID-19.
Yes.
The domestic
International.
tourism sector's done well with the as the lack of international travel has meant that domestic consumers are spending up locally, but it won't make up for the money from offshore being pumped into the New Zealand economy. Judith Collins, do we need a level of creative destruction in the tourism industry? i.e., should the goal be to nurse the sector through to the other side of COVID, or do we need to accept that the international tourism sector, as we know it, is not coming back?
Well, I think the international tourist sector is going to take some time to come back. We have to be realistic about it. But I'd say to you too, is that I was in Rotorua the other day, and that is a tourism mecca in the North Island, where people were not feeling very happy at all. And they were feeling very unhappy because they weren't even getting the domestic tourism, because Auckland was still in a level 2 lockdown at that stage. But also they felt that nothing was being done for them.
So as international tourism, should we be nursing it through COVID, or should we?
Well, I think that
very good of the moderator for pressing that question, because what Collins was doing, it was that personal politician story. Oh, I went to people in Rotorua would know different, let me tell you. Exactly.
I think that there are sometimes we're going to have to say that some tourist assets are going to have to go into hibernation. I think that's only realistic. We cannot continue. We can't go down this path of more and more wage subsidies and when there's no work.
Jacinda Ardern?
Oh, at level 2, Aucklanders could travel and did travel.
But they
domestic operators did notice.
Not last week, they weren't.
And B, yes, this is a point where we are going to have to reimagine the future of tourism. But there is cause for us to think about how we can build back in the aftermath of this for a sector that is exactly what tourism wants, Luke. They want sustainability. They want to be able to project ourselves into the world as a place you can come and not leave a mark behind, where you can enjoy our beautiful landscapes without doing damage to it in the process. Now's the time to reimagine tourism for New Zealand.
Are we going to have Kiwi local rates enforced upon tourism operators for all the money that we're flaking out to them right now? Do we get a subsidy back from the other side to go and see their own things in our country, since we've supported them through this?
And that was the main reason why I was against the tourism bailout. I believe it was $72 million. Somebody may be able to correct me, but basically it was because they effectively chased the wealthy overseas market at their own peril. They jacked up the prices. It was down in Taupo with your brother and Catherine. And Catherine went on the AJ Hackett bungee over the Waikato River, and it cost something like $190. This is bloody ridiculous. They could squeeze more money out of the wealthy tourists, predominantly from China. They do come here. They have a lot more money than the average Kiwi. The fact that they boosted their prices up to levels that no average New Zealander could have afforded, no, they cannot go crying to the government because of that.
Now they turn around with their hand out, asking us for a hand up after they do this. Right. My money's got strings attached then.
So regardless of what Cindy says, she was in the wrong for that bailout. We just want to make that clear.
Thank you, Jacinda Ardern. That concludes the first section of this debate. Now I'd like to hand over to Carmel Heyman, editor of the Press, to moderate the next section. But first we have another video reader question from consultant paediatric dentist Arun Natarajan.
Kia ora. My name is Arun Natarajan. I'm a specialist pediatric dentist at the Christchurch Hospital. Every year, 8,000 kids approximately are being put to sleep for dental extractions under general anesthesia. Each operation costs about $4,000 tax-based money. Kids as young as 18 months old are being put to sleep for rotten teeth extractions. And it's not uncommon for me and my colleagues to actually take out all the teeth on 3 to 5 year olds. That's ridiculous. This is a serious health problem because children having childhood cavities are being linked to developing diabetes and cardiovascular problems later on in life. Should you lead the next government, what are you going to do about the fluoridation amendment bill that's sitting at the parliament now? The WHO recommends tax on sugary drinks. New Zealand needs sugary drinks levy. What are you going to do about that? How are you going to regulate what's being shown to our kids through food marketing? Thank you.
I understand where he's going with the question, but dude, phrasing, don't say putting kids to sleep, eh?
Yep. Top covers that with a 20% tax on junk food.
I'm just going to try and skip past this.
They should not tax the junk food. It's not abhorrent for people to enjoy this in moderation. The problem is irresponsible parents allowing their kids. The parents are in control of what their kids eat and drink. Ours were. Really, how hard is it? You know the health dangers of consuming too much sugar and fat. Don't let your kids eat and drink that garbage.
Pretty much.
And sugar? And free dental care.
Aaron Natarajan's told us it's costing $32 million a year to pull out the rotten teeth of our children's mouths under general anaesthetic. That's 8,000 children.
Diabolical.
Some as young as
Alarming.
18 months old.
It is diabolical and alarming, but it is related to the fact that people are not taking personal responsibility for the choices that they make. And for some reason, we are subsidizing the making of bad choices by subsidizing this care and not making people bear the burden of the cost of their decisions.
Is it the government's responsibility to do the parents' parenting for them?
He's pleading for fluoride in our drinking water. Christchurch has never had it. Centres such as Hamilton had it and removed it. Judith Collins, in 2016, the last national government introduced a bill giving health boards the power to direct their local authorities to introduce fluoride. If you formed a government, would you ensure this bill was passed?
Well, I would actually, and I can tell you I've been on the record well before when we were in government saying that the Hamilton City Council had taken a completely gutless decision by not actually promoting this. I grew up in an area without fluoride because I was on a farm. And I look at my son who had, one filling in the whole of his youth and teenage years, brought up in the city. I just, with fluoride. I also think too is that fluoride in terms of toothpaste is already there, which is why we've got this big program on young kids learning how to clean their teeth at school and doing that every day. And that's one of Dr. Shane Retty's absolute passions. I utterly agree with it.
Sure. And Jacinda Ardern, the Labour Party, said it supported the bill, but hasn't passed. It's just been sitting there collecting dust. Do the children of Christchurch deserve fluoride in their water?
Well, I support fluoridation for keeping children's teeth healthy. And you've got a choice. You either put it in your water or you literally paint it onto children's teeth. That's the choice. And so if we all want children's teeth to be healthy, we have to start making those choices. So we didn't have the numbers in Parliament and government, obviously, to make that change.
You didn't ask us.
But you can see...
You're saying the coalition...
You could have asked us.
Very good interjection by TOP there. Yes, no mention of diet. However, I believe that it was rescinded in Hamilton because of a public outcry against it. And there are a lot of conspiracy mongers who live around Christchurch who don't want it because they believe widely debunked claims that it's unhealthy or otherwise damaging.
Despite all evidence to the contrary.
So really, the government can say, yeah, we want to give it to the local bodies to do, but if enough of the residents protest to the local bodies against introducing it, it may not get anywhere anyway.
Yeah, we weren't able to progress it, but it's pleasing to see that there is some common ground.
Well, it's always been there. Come on, it's been there since Tony Ryle was the health minister.
That wasn't intended as a negative statement. It is possible for us to actually agree on issues.
Okay.
Well, you should have asked us.
I don't know that it is, but it's a lovely note.
The agreement on fluoridation bill that's going to get passed. Judith Collins, would you consider a sugar tax?
No, I would not.
Why not?
I actually think education is better, and I think one of the problems we have is that a lot of people don't seem to understand that sugar left on their children's teeth at night is going to rot those teeth, and actually, by the way, on their own teeth. The other thing that a lot of people don't seem to understand is that right now dental care for under 18-year-olds is already free, and yet there are around 90,000 kids who apparently aren't actually receiving that. I think those are the right numbers. It's amazing.
It is a good point. For under 18s, it is free. So we have...
No, to both of you, taxpayer funded. Taxpayer funded. You're both lying. It's not free.
No, nothing's free, of course, but I agree with both of them on this one.
To dig deeper, what is happening that means that our children aren't accessing free dental care and instead are having to go under anaesthetic to have them removed? One of our concerns is that we're not necessarily reaching children in rural or more isolated areas, that we need extra dental buses providing full service to reach those children. We want an extra 20 to get into those communities and make that difference.
it isn't just the children in isolated communities. I'm very sorry to say it. It's the children with very irresponsible parents who don't know or don't care.
All right. And to a sugar tax, yes or no, Jacinda Ardern?
No, because people talk about it on sugary drinks. It is in cereal. It is in tomato sauce. It is in almost every item that our children are reaching for.
By the way,
but there are things that we can do in schools in particular. We want to roll out, and we will roll out, if re-elected, healthy lunches to 200,000 children across the country. That is part of our plan.
Okay, now I think you'll both be expecting questions on the Canterbury District Health Board.
Our growing obesity.
Jacinda Ardern, in 2017, you came to Christchurch and you promised to repair.
Fact check on the top guy. Yes, we have a massive problem with obesity. However, it is no longer growing.
And we should stop eating all the vegetables and move to ketogenic diet because it totally works. They're having the same problem as we had the other week, where we can't hear the interjections because they're not pausing properly like we are.
And they're not really talking much, which I'm perfectly happy with.
Excellent.
The relationship between the Health Ministry and the Canterbury DHB. Incredibly, in August, 7 of its top chief executives quit. The chief executive was so highly regarded, his staff gave him a guard of honour when he left. I've never seen that before. How will you restore the morale of those staff who are grieving over the loss of their leadership? Will you sack the board who accepted their resignations?
No, I won't. But I absolutely understand after David Mates has seen the DHB and that team through March 15, and of course the aftermath of the earthquakes, and played a role in supporting with Whakaari White Island. I absolutely understand the huge pressure that has been on that team. Yes, it has been tough, and rebuilding that relationship has been tough. You've seen us here putting that extra equity funding in and committing to find a sustainable way through with the clinical team in the DHB. But
without their leaders,
what Canterbury is experiencing is writ large what all our DHBs are experiencing. We have a problem with our health sector that
it's called incompetence.
Have to resolve, and you have felt it acutely here, and we need to resolve it.
Collins, how would you resolve this? Would you get rid of the board or the Crown Monitor that was
well, of course. Well, you're right, Kamala, that 3 years ago, Ms Ardern said that they'd repair the relationship. Actually, October last year, they actually stopped negotiations with the District Health Board around the deficit. And of course, most of that deficit's caused by the fact that the Hagley building wasn't built in time and the way that they
you cannot disown what has happened
so
here.
Having said
it is
that,
legacy.
So having said
it is
that,
a legacy issue.
Well,
what has
actually,
happened here. You cannot disown what has happened in Canterbury.
This entire crowd Labour supporters.
I know you don't want to hear the truth. I know you don't want to hear the truth, Ms Ardern.
Well, really, they're supposed to be impartial, and I noticed this at the last debate of the 2017 election, Bill English and Ardern, when, no, they were absolutely cheering Labour on a lot more.
But actually, the Health Board was working with the Ministry of Health, the repaired relationship, well, they just wiped out that relationship. And actually, that's why the senior leadership team's all gone, because they couldn't take this anymore. The Crown Monitor was brought in out of Auckland to come and sort it out. And guess what? It's ended up with the Crown having to, 2 days?
Would you keep the Crown Monitor?
2 days before this?
Would you keep the Crown Monitor?
You'd actually make sure that someone was in charge. But that was put in before all the issues that occurred.
And what would you do?
Well, you'd actually have to sort it out pretty fast. And the
Moderator's Roger, get your shit together.
thing is, it's already been paid now. So you'd have to have the Crown Monitor while there's no senior leadership team. But the other thing that
you
would
wouldn't
have to
sack
happen,
the Crown Monitor or the board. Wouldn't start again.
You'd have to probably start again. The problem is
New board. You're saying there would be a new board.
You'd have to start again with that relationship, because the Ministry of Health is a bully towards these district health boards, and we're seeing it up and down the country with every district health board saying to us is they can't negotiate.
negotiation. They just stopped the negotiation under Miss Ardern.
Absolutely.
So they haven't had enough money.
And people aren't silly enough, honestly, Camilla. If 2 days ago, Chris Hipkin turned up here and say, oh, okay, we've got a debate. I know what, we'll pay off the debt. Okay, we're not stupid.
Was it an election bribe? Jacinda Ardern, was that an election bribe?
No.
Yes, it
It's
is.
about making sure that the people of Canterbury have services delivered. And at some point in this conversation, we have to talk about whether we have improved the health outcomes for the people in this room. That has to be what it's about. Let's not lose sight in this debate about improving health outcomes. We know, because we have increased the amount of funding that has gone into every DHB, this one included, we know it's about more than money. We have to start hitting those hard issues. Health sector reform is necessary.
Absolutely, but when they move into their new hospital building next month...
With their car park.
Thank you. They will not have a teen cancer unit. They will not have a paediatric...
And I've been told that some of the issues...
No, I really hope that doesn't interrupt this recording.
That were previously unresolved are being worked through because of that equity funding.
Right.
So let's see if we can work that through and get that Hagley building up to where it needs to be.
Yes, well, we all wish for that. Judith Collins, final question on the DHB before we move on. The Treasury itself says historic underfunding of the Canterbury District Health Boards contributed to these very financial woes we're now talking about. This year, an Infometrics report said that the shortfall in operational funding for DHBs grew every year under the previous national government. Your fiscal plan, as mentioned earlier, has only $814 million for rising costs across education, law and order, health. Can New Zealanders be confident that a government you lead will fund healthcare adequately?
Every single year that we were in government, we put more money into the DHBs. And I think the other thing too, Camilla, is to understand is that we also expected results for the people of Canterbury.
Some years there was no funding for capital infrastructure. Some years there was nothing. That is why we have run down hospitals in this country.
That is simply not true. Who's built the new hospital? Oh, that was us. That was right. Yeah, forget about that. Why don't you?
Right. We could talk about the DHB all night, but I don't want to do that. Another issue.
Judith seems to feed off making those nasty gotcha comments, doesn't she?
Well, I think she's been instructed to. I think she's been instructed to take on the whole mantle of gotcha comments and go and do that. I've heard that from a few people.
And they have to. They're behind in the polls. This is the last roll of the dice with one more week to go, one and a bit more weeks to go. What's there to lose? Nothing.
Just ignore both of them.
Just
one of the minor
bloody
parties.
well done.
Vote for the minor parties. Why are we voting for these? Not even going to say it. Keep going.
Dear to the heart of Cantabrians is our beautiful rivers and lakes. Now, 95% of them running through urban and farming areas are polluted, according to the Ministry of the Environment. Rivers that I certainly swam in as a child are no longer safe. Locals say Canterbury's Selwyn River has been Chernobylised. So despite enormous efforts by farmers who have been striving to keep...
Irradiated, has it, in a nuclear-free country.
I didn't know we had nuclear waste in New Zealand.
Well, I'm sure we're okay with it now. We can have free power.
Thanks, Labour, for that, by the way. No nuclear waste in New Zealand. So, yeah, don't buy the hyperbole.
Keep up with the rolling maul of new rules and regulations. There's been almost no improvement in 10 years. Now, Labour came into government saying it was going to start to repair this damage. But freshwater scientists say these reforms, which have just taken effect in September, are a waste of paper. Judith Collins,
yes.
You have said these freshwater standards would be gone by lunchtime, or at least reformed.
They would be reformed. And as the scientists have said, they're a waste of paper. The fact is, it is not possible to have a one-size-fits-all for the whole country. The rivers of Canterbury are not the same as the rivers of the Waikato. It is very important that we have rules and regulations and standards that are applicable to the regions that represent New Zealand. And I'd also say to you that our very worst rivers are our urban rivers. And I think that we need to understand that. And as you said,
but our urban rivers make up less than 1% of our water.
And they're the filthiest ones we have.
Exactly. It's the urbanites that are causing the vast majority of environmental damage.
And why is that?
So would a national government commit to nitrate levels in our rivers?
We'd be very careful about that, depending on where the region is, because what we know is that if we did that in some parts of the country, such as Pukekohe in the northern region, we would actually end up without the market gardens, or at least with about a 20% decrease in their loss, so in their use.
So a market garden, as long as it's making money, can pollute our rivers. Is that what?
No, we're not
Bullshit question.
saying to pollute the rivers. It's very important, the use of nitrate itself. We're not saying it would go in the rivers. Actually, it should be in the soil, actually growing vegetables. But I'd say to you that it's not possible to have a reasonable and sensible policy that covers the entire country when we have different rivers. As I said, the rivers of Canterbury are different from
Cinder Ardern, nitrates cap, China, America, Europe, they've got a cap and we don't have it. Ours is very high. And
China does not have a cap. China does not give a damn. I don't know where she gets that information from, but if there's one thing we can be damn sure about, it's that the Chinese do not give a damn about such things, which is why they are able to do the exact same kind of farming and agriculture work that we do, only for much cheaper.
You've seen our policy on nitrates, on winter grazing, on fencing, on the things that will stop the degradation, make a material difference over 5 years, and within a generation, make those rivers swimmable again. That is how long, even with these changes, it will take to repair what has been done over a number of years. You've seen our plan. On one hand, you've claimed that some environmentalists are unhappy. On the others, some are saying that it's the end of the dairy sector as we know it. It is neither. It is a plan to make our rivers swimmable again. And what I haven't heard from the National Party is what their plan is. They said that our standards would be gone by lunchtime, ironically on the same day that they also declared they would get rid of lunch breaks for workers. So,
well, that's not true.
I'm yet to see.
That's not true.
Because the status quo is not working.
Yeah,
the status quo.
Well, actually, if it's so bad, then why did you wait to the last day of Parliament to suddenly rush through regulations like that? Why didn't you put them up 2-3 years ago? The reason is you didn't want them debated.
That is absolutely
debated, and you just pushed it in there and said, and by the end of the day, as I recall, David Parker, the Minister of Environment, already changed some of them.
That is
so quite clearly they were not thought through.
That is factually incorrect.
It was just not enough work done.
3 years working alongside Dairy NZ, working alongside Fed Farmers, working alongside Council to get a plan that will stick.
And why didn't you change them the same day?
And every other National Party leader had not said they would roll them back because of the amount of work that went into them until Judith Collins.
You're absolutely right that a lot of work went into it, but we've settled on a plan that sets our nitrogen limits in our rivers to 3 times what's permissible in China.
Do you really think
and it is lying?
Think that they are?
In China.
And also what they're not letting on is that farmers, for the most part, there are always going to be a few holdouts and rogue ones out there. But for the most part, the advance in farming practices and technology that have made us the best in the world at that have also led to increased sustainability. The government was talking about mandating, for instance, the fencing of waterways. Farmers have been doing that since the 1970s. You'd be crazy not to. It's your water that you'd be polluting on the farm. So we've already figured this out without the government going in there and telling them what to do. And in terms of we've worked with the farmers, what Jacinda was saying, we've liaised with them. No, they haven't. When you hear that, we've liaised with the farmers, we've done that, that's a bunch of bureaucrats going down there talking about something they know nothing about with farmers with who they cannot speak the language and the terminology of, and being a right pain in the ass to them. You ask the farmers, they'll say exactly the same thing.
China. I don't know if they follow the rules.
I'm just wondering.
No, I don't know.
Do you really think that?
Good question.
No.
Do you really think? Because I know in New Zealand we take things very seriously and we hold ourselves to very high standards. I'm sure every other country in the world does too.
All right, I'm going to move on to roading. Now, Jacinda Ardern in 2017, the Labour Party promised $100 million for public transport in Christchurch, including commuter light rail to Rolleston, which Andrew Little said would be here in a matter of years. Where is it?
And we are still absolutely ambitious for mass transit for this region. We need. Actually, I'm not going to step back from the idea of working together on a plan that the community agrees with. We're still working with Regional Council on their plan. We've funded the business case. Now it's about them being ambitious and the community being ambitious about what they want to see.
The light rail might happen.
Yes, if the community support it.
The community do not support it, lest of all the businesses whose shop frontage and parking spaces it would take up. There was a plan to put it down Dominion Road. There are very good reasons why it came to naught.
Judith Collins, you've promised a 4-lane highway between Christchurch and Ashburton.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because it's needed and because the people of the Canterbury region actually need it. It is an unsafe road at the moment and it does need to be, and we've got it in our transport plan that we've announced, part of the $31 billion.
And how does building roads help New Zealand meet our climate change promises?
Oh, really well, because we're also promoting electric vehicles.
That'll be powered by coal-fueled power stations.
You might have, well, you're the one that used all the coal. We actually used gas. So...
Very good zinger and very true as well. We do need roads regardless of what we're going to be using in the future, whether it's more environmentally friendly cars or ride sharing or buses. I don't care what
they all use roads.
They use roads. Roads are an investment for the future above and beyond trains, and most definitely light rail, which has actually code for
and literally always have been through the entirety of human history. We build roads.
Interstate, Auckland, Christchurch,
Boom, Egypt, everyone. The whole point, when you have a big empire, you've got a big country to control, you need roads. You need to transport things faster, and roads are a very flexible way to do that.
I think it's really important to remember that Miss Ardern promised electric vehicles, that they were going to have a third of the government fleet in it. They were going to do all these things. It would all be done by now. And do you know how many out of the 15,000 electric vehicles in the government fleet
you don't need to
how many there are? 15,000? 108. That's all she's done. 108. No wonder she doesn't like me answering it.
I'm going to pass on to Luke because environment is actually our next topic, and I think that's a perfect segue, electric cars.
Judith Collins.
Yes.
What sort of car do you drive?
At the moment, I'm getting driven around a bit more than I'm driving, but I can tell you I do actually drive a car with petrol.
So do I. Do you know?
To be fair, she can't give away brand names and things because that would be weird advertising.
Know which one?
Yes, I do. Oh, you want the...
Yeah. What sort of car?
Okay, I drive a BMW.
Jacinda Ardern?
A Hyundai Ioniqs, which is an EV.
So,
because...
Yeah, I'd rather have a BMW, to be honest.
Me too.
I think most of the crowd think so too.
The reason that I asked both of you this question.
You think she bought the Ioniqs because of the subsidy for rich people to buy hybrid cars? Do you think maybe that's it? Because see, we subsidize people to buy really expensive new EVs because rich people need help.
They will be an absolute disaster when they all need to be disposed of in 20 years' time.
10 years' time of battery replacements. But
10 years'
literally,
time,
my
and
last,
we can't recycle the materials.
my last boss bought an EV specifically because of the subsidy on new EVs.
Is that New Zealand is blessed to have abundant sustainable power. Now, private vehicles currently make up almost 70% of the nation's household emissions. Now, unlike other economies with predominantly fossil fuel generated energy, such as Australia, electric vehicles could seriously decrease New Zealand's emissions. There are currently about 22,000 electric vehicles from a light vehicle fleet, about 5 million in New Zealand. It's about less than 0.5%. Jacinda Ardern, what percentage of the national fleet do you want to be electric in 10 years? And what concrete steps is your government, if you're elected, will you take to achieve it?
First thing, Luke, they have to be low emissions vehicles, not just EVs. You know, one of the things I know about EVs is that price point for them right now is out of reach of most New Zealanders. I want them to have low emission choices. I want them to have the choices of a bus. I want them to have the choice of safely cycling. I want them to have a choice of a low emissions vehicle because of standards. We are, but actually 21% of our emissions come from transport. It is not as large as people make out. And of that 21%, actually through that most significant investment in public transport of any government, we give people choice. A 60,000 plus EV car is not the only answer right now. For the majority of New Zealanders, they need good choices.
Hundreds of buses driving around empty for most of the day is not more efficient than individual transportation.
And she talks about, obviously referring to the kind, and this is the problem with politicians, when they talk their anecdotes, they're referring to people who they don't know personally, they've just come into contact with them. When you give examples like Ms. Ardern has, you know, it's people who need to cycle, they need to use EVs. She knows people who live in the cities who can practically cycle. It's a practical proposition to cycle to work. A lot of people cannot do that. They need cars. This should be obvious. That's all.
That's right.
Trump's got a policy to remove the fringe benefit tax off all low emission vehicles, and that includes public transport.
Cars, particularly second-hand cars at the market.
I think also our UDA, our Urban Development
Otherwise,
Act,
the fleet buyers to the businesses,
material to
which is why we're saying to businesses, if you go and buy your staff to use EVs, you'll be able to actually not pay fringe benefit tax on them. So that will encourage you to buy EVs as opposed to diesel or petrol sort of cars. And the other thing to say too is that if we can get a third of our vehicles in the government fleet of 15,000, if we can get them to be EVs in the next few years, that's going to make a big difference.
In 10 years, do you have
Okay, I have a question on this though, Judith. Given that the unitary plan in Auckland pretty much has no car parks, where are all your staff going to take their cars to charge them at their non-existent apartment houses with no car parks? Are you going to put the chargers on the walls as well? You're going to get the fringe benefit tax on there. How are you going to charge these vehicles? Are people going to go to charging stations? Are you going to have 50 charging stations in the office? You get to the office and you plug it in the morning. What if the technicians have got a job first thing in the morning? Sorry guys, it is just not practical.
The national grid cannot cope with an enormous number of people buying electric cars. And it comes back to just the overarching point. If people are going to use electric cars, if that's what you want, lobby the car manufacturers to make better electric cars like Tesla has. It is not the government's job or right to coerce people and to try and get everybody to buy them with these subsidies. They will, you build it and the people will come. You build the better cars, the people will buy them.
Exactly.
It's as simple as it is.
In 10 years, do you have a target?
Actually agreeing with us.
We've actually haven't gone quite to 10 years, but what we have saying is we can get a third of the government fleet. And the other thing is just to encourage people even more to buy an EV, apart from the fleets, the businesses, is to actually let them use the bus lanes so that they can actually have a real advantage. And that's for the hybrids as well. Although I've been looking a lot at EVs because I've taken this point. So I'm actually getting right at the moment a PowerPoint put in my carport. So I actually don't have a garage, but I've got a carport and it's going in there because I do want to get an EV. But the other thing is, actually, I think EVs are very important and I've been looking at them in hybrids. I actually prefer the EV to the hybrid because the hybrid seems to only go for a little while before you go into petrol or diesel, and they're actually often tougher on the environment because they're much heavier.
Luke,
and therefore they use
the opportunity here for New Zealand and our profile and climate change sits well beyond EVs. It shouldn't just be about whether or not we've got EVs in the Crown fleet. It's whether or not they're being powered by 100% renewable electricity.
No.
Well, they're not now, are they?
Having an EV
I mean, the science
that
has
in
said
a dry hydrological year is powered by coal.
not low-hanging
This is
fruit
the
at all.
opportunity that we have. Very
Well, let's
few
face it, there's
countries
not a
in the
lot of
world
evidence
as
going on in
we
this
are
discussion.
with geothermal.
Your comment, Mr. Topman. There isn't a lot of evidence going on in this discussion at all. I'm surprised nobody's really brought up the fact, and probably because they're both very much for it, that whether the electric car is producing its emissions when it's built or when it's used is completely irrelevant. It costs more. It is more of a cost to the environment and the amount of pollution and climate change that is produced by creating an electric car in the first place than it costs to building a gasoline-powered car and using it throughout its 10 to 15-year lifespan. Until we can fix that, it's an absolutely futile attempt, and it's basically just greenwashing by car manufacturers who want to make more money selling electric cars at inflated prices. So he's right, but he probably doesn't understand why.
You're right. We will get to really efficient EVs at some stage, but the appropriate fuel for the appropriate application. In some cases, diesel and petrol are the appropriate fuels. In some cases, batteries are the appropriate fuel storage mechanism. Appropriate fuels for appropriate applications. It is not a one-size-fits-all solution.
With wind, with solar, with hydro, we have the opportunity to green our grid, and not only that, with the potential of hydrogen, which we will have our first production in a matter of months, in Taupo in a matter of months, through a joint venture with Japan.
Oh, yes, right, okay.
Through a Māori trust, we have the potential to export green energy. The opportunity here is enormous for us. It is a chance for us to reach our climate targets and open up.
Miss Ardern is the one who's actually burning the coal. She's been burning the coal, bringing it in from Indonesia to be burnt in Huntly. And the reason is because we needed to do it to keep the lights on. When I was Minister of Energy and Resources in 2016, 17, we actually were using then about 5% of our electricity generation was coming from coal. Actually, just a few weeks ago, it was 28%, and that's under Miss Ardern and her so-called green electricity.
If we step back and look at New Zealand's broader place in the world when it comes to climate change, when it comes to emission reduction, should New Zealand be aiming to lead the pack and be a model global citizen, or should we be in the middle of the pack, keeping abreast with our trading partners? And
what's your answer, Matthew?
The answer?
Well,
and why?
lead the world. Why not?
The answer is we already are.
Because the world doesn't listen and will just be exploited by companies who don't give a damn.
Yep, exactly. You just raise your own costs.
We're not going to inspire anybody.
Are leading the pack. Our emissions of greenhouse gases are 0.17% of the world's emissions. Our farmers produce their products, their protein, what we send overseas and export at fewer carbon miles or carbon emissions than any other nation that we deal with. And why is that? Because they already are. They're grass-fed mostly. We actually have free-range cows. We don't keep them stuck in a shed all day. And one of the other things that we do better than anyone else is that we look to science and technology to improve that. And that is important. When you look at the great success of New Zealand agriculture and horticulture, it's mostly, a lot of it's based around not just climate or anything else, it's based around using technology and science. And that's something that we can do more of. And that's why dairying and other parts of the agriculture and horticulture area is so keen on looking to science and improving the way that we do things.
We are leading the pack, but not because our contribution to emissions is small. In fact, the opposite. But because in spite of our small contribution, we are doing our bit, which is what we need every country in the world to do if we are to tackle climate change for the next generation. We are leading the world because we have a Zero Carbon Act. We are leading the world because we are investing in having carbon budgets. We are leading the world because we stopped future oil and gas permits in New Zealand. We are leading the world because our emissions profile says 48% of our emissions will come from agriculture, and we are investing in a plan.
It's the only thing paying the bills at the moment, Miss Ardern.
We are working with the sector to develop a plan which means we will have the technology and IP to sell to the rest of the world.
You've got nothing
What I
else to
still
sell.
do not have.
No, I don't understand this. I don't understand this.
What I still have not heard is what National's plan to tackle climate change is.
I tell you
they
what
seem
our
to
plan is.
disagree with every measure we have taken, and yet that's the only way we'll meet our Paris.
Miss Ardern does not seem to understand. We have a crisis, and that crisis is the economy. When we have $20 billion is coming from dairy exports, and $20 billion is the health budget. We need to wake up to the reality. We have an economic crisis that
We
we're
need to
being
wake
pushed
up
into,
that unless we
and
move on this, we will be left behind and we will lose our brand.
we already
It is a
have our-
competitive environment. And I have to point out that dairy
If it's a competitive environment, why are you trying to make us uncompetitive with regulations?
is doing well, and that is as we are working on these environmental issues together.
It's not just about brand, it's about the reality. And we have to pay for health. We have to pay for education. That's $17 billion a year. Understand this. There is no free lunch for us in this world. We are a little country that has to fight for every trade deal we do and every single thing. And we cannot continue to go down
And
a
it
path
is a
of
sad
destroying
day. It
our
is a sad
economy
day
and
when
our
we give up
exports
on our
and our
reputation
exports.
of being
Look,
clean,
I think you've had your
green,
turn.
and carbon
Had your turn.
neutral.
Thank you
because
both.
we are proud of it.
It's important that we
To be
have
fair, we gave
money
up on that a
coming
little while
into
ago.
New Zealand so
Let's
we can
move-
pay
let's move it
for
along.
health. And we
Combine with
cannot
Let's move it along.
continue down
We're
this path.
just going to change tack
That
here.
would get us some.
So
Until now, they've been very well mannered, but I think they're both a little bit flustered and they're starting to interrupt each other.
I'm okay with that. Judith's been pretty interjecty up until this point, and Jacinda had a bit of a go there. I'm okay with that.
In terms of the oil and gas banning, you know, that's the danger of this sort of rhetoric. I don't care who's saying it, that comes from the government. It's basically somebody saying that under the guise of reducing emissions and preventing climate change, at a stroke, they're putting 3,500 men out of work. And the implications to the society of the Taranaki region are tremendous. But because they can stand there with all the smiles and say this is the way forward, that gets pushed under the rug.
So both
Good luck.
of you have
Give it a go, Luke.
both of you have stated your preference for a 4-year term. Will you
Yes.
join forces to make that happen, or will you let the public decide through a referendum?
Thank you for
Consider it.
segueing to a
Matthew, yes,
unity
no.
moment. I think that's a
missed the
positive
question.
thing.
4-year
Look,
term.
I would happily, after the election,
Yes.
talk to Judith and the national team about a 4-year term, because I do think there seems to be consensus. Let's make the most of that.
Referendum
And-
or a vote?
And of course, I would have thought we always have to have a referendum for a major constitutional issue like that. But I would have thought that Ms. Ardern couldn't even talk to us about fluoride. So I'm not sure she's going to talk to us about anything. We'll be talking to her about it.
And the unity moment's gone.
Well, I think that's your side. I think that's your side.
Very good, sisters.
Judith Collins.
Yes, Luke.
When the Queen dies, should New Zealand become a republic?
I must say,
Tune,
Matthew?
didn't it?
yeah, that was an interesting one. I don't think so, but I think that people in New Zealand are starting to move that way, and I think it's. I personally really admire the Queen and Prince Philip, but I've got to say, I think we're moving that way, and I think the people of New Zealand will make up their own mind.
Jacinda Ardern?
Not in that moment. Not in that moment. I mean,
No.
particularly.
I think that's exactly the moment when the referendum will happen and we'll decide one or the other right then, when the Queen dies. I think that's when it's going to happen. And I think we'll become a republic, despite being a monarchist myself.
It's completely pointless.
It is, because we're a republic anyway. For everything except in name.
As we will be, I have no doubt, regardless of position, acknowledging the Queen. And I do think it'll be in my lifetime, but it doesn't feel like it's quite ready yet.
It won't be long.
Well,
You know,
long
we
live
have
the
to,
Queen.
yeah, indeed.
So she's, I mean,
if we
talk about
become a
And
republic,
we have to make sure that we have, of course, the Crown, Te Tiriti. Those are issues that would need to be resolved, and they're big issues.
Thank you, Jacinda Ardern and Judith Collins. That's it for the first part of our debate. Our leaders are now going to take a 15-minute break while Stuff's Carol Hirschfeld discusses the first half action with Leanne Watson, Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce and University Senior Political Lecturer.
Let's skip ahead. We've got enough discussion going on. I think.
Let's actually, I also want to pause quickly here as well and come back in just a second. We'll be back with you shortly after these messages
these
from our
messages.
non-sponsors. And hopefully that was a very small gap, and we are back to it again. Do it sound good?
No.
Come on, Top.
Here we go again.
You're letting us down.
Do you support the proposed cannabis reform bill?
Support every single one of the people in this room having their say, and
Oh,
whatever
come
you
on.
decide,
What's your answer?
and whatever you decide, I will.
Jacinda, you're missing an opportunity here. You need to just come out and say that you're in favour of it. Everybody knows it anyway. Say it, do it. You'll win a bunch of support.
She can't afford to put off the moderates and the conservatives who, for reasons only they can explain, are going to be voting Labour.
Voted for it.
They might want
And
to
I
hear-
do
they
think
might want to have some leadership from you on this, Jacinda Ardern.
leadership is making sure that and not every issue has to be influenced by a political agenda.
Oh, come on.
Every
You
single
voted
vote
for
in
it.
this room counts as much as mine. And I do think that I genuinely want to hear the answer to this. I want everyone to have faith that no matter what they vote, I will implement it, whether it's a yes or no vote. I haven't heard that commitment from the opposition.
You voted for it, didn't you? You voted for it.
I've said that after it's
did. You voted
declared
for
that
it.
I will give
Come
my
on,
answer, but I will implement the outcome. It's
So
a fair
we
question.
can't pressure you to give us an.
Okay, Jacinda, hold you to that one. If you're going to implement the outcome, okay, sure.
Come hell or high water. And remember, only the Green Party has officially said that they will implement it.
Well, now Labour has as well, if it comes out that way in the referendum, which I think is an absolutely fair and valid point. Sure, but I'd also like to know your opinion on it, Jacinda, as well.
It is a fair question.
Every Labour minister, senior Labour ministers come out and said they voted for it. Miss Ardern
That is-
voted, she voted for it.
That is not true.
She did.
That is not
Please
true.
vote again.
I am
Vote for
not
it.
whipping
Did
the
you not
Labour
vote it?
caucus.
I'm not
They
whipping
will
anything
vote
either. I can tell you right
however
now,
they
you voted
choose.
for it.
But
They're not
Judith,
asking about me, they're asking about you. They know
Judith.
where I voted against it. You voted for it. That's
Judith,
it.
if New Zealand votes yes,
I feel like this
Answer.
is
if New Zealand votes yes, will you implement
Don't
it?
ask me, I'm asking you.
Good question, though, Jacinda. Good question. Judith, man up. Do it, Judith. What are you going to do? Implement or not?
How'd you vote?
Judith,
I'm happy to tell you
if
this.
New Zealand votes yes, will you
Just
implement it?
answer that question.
Will you
You answer the question, Judith. Now's your turn.
You vote for it. You don't know. Come on, you do know. You did
Unless
vote
you
for it.
become the moderator.
Judith Collins, what is the single biggest action your party will take to address the threat of climate change?
Well, that is just ridiculous. The moderators didn't push Collins on that just
Yes,
now.
they bloody should have.
That is crazy. That is this weak-fisted. Oh.
What the number one thing that we're
Number
doing
one.
is to grow the tech sector in a way that it is a rival to all the other export sectors. It's already worth $8 billion to New Zealand, and our tech policy is all about growing that sector so that we can have obviously smarter business, smarter agriculture.
How long
smarter
will it
everything.
take?
Actually, not that long, actually. It's we're really already in a tech hub. It's called Christchurch. It's a tech centre, and it's full of really smart people doing excellent things.
It certainly is. Thank you. The single biggest thing.
I know you'll have a lot to say on this, Matthew.
Zero Carbon Act will make the single biggest difference. But we have to also, we of course have to look at every sector. Getting to 100% renewable electricity generation, industrial heat at the moment is a huge contributor.
Yeah, if we double the price of
Hopefully
carbon,
we have a plan
that
across
will-
every single element of
And
our
also
emissions
if Labour
right now,
listened
and
to
that is
the
what's going to make a
Climate
difference long
Change
term.
Council.
Plan
that-
is not.
I think we should actually respond to the top people here. Because the Opportunities Party is very left-wing libertarian, and I'm very conservative libertarian. So there's probably some common ground here, and what they might say might be interesting.
Fair enough. All right. So they think that they should charge people for their emissions and increase those charges massively. Well, that's an easy way to put everybody out of business because, of course, as has already been pointed out tonight, agriculture does produce more emissions. That is the inherent nature of the practice. They can't do very much about it. A lot of those emissions are methane gas. That is simply a byproduct of keeping so much cattle in the country. It's entirely incidental. It's throwback to the burp and fart tax of 2007, which the Greens, back when they were even loonier than now with old Nandor Tanchos and Owen Clark's government, were trying to implement. It's the opposite of libertarianism. This is the government
No,
trying
it's not really. It's not really. It's not really. What he's really saying, with perhaps not even realizing it, which is what I've said to Jeff a couple of times as well, is you need to make people incorporate the negative externalities of whatever they're doing. And okay, so we assume for the purpose of this that carbon emissions and methane emissions and things cause climate change. Let's just take that as a given, because I can't be bothered arguing that. But then you have to turn around and say, well, how do we make people internalize the negative externalities of doing those activities which produce those emissions? So one example is doing a carbon tax, something like that. But you're now artificially inflating things in the market, and you're interfering with the market in such a way to try and incorporate those negative externalities. But they need to be incorporated to the people that are using them, exploiting them, and through their actions. And it's not really the farmers. It's all of us sitting in the cities that are demanding the products from the farmers that are causing these things and are causing those problems in the first place. So are you going to now just increase the cost of everything across the board?
And where do you stop? I mean,
Where do you stop?
I mentioned smartphones before. They're all made using unsustainable practices with materials that were mined by child slaves in the Congo. All right? Are you going to...
And technology reduces our emissions because it makes us more efficient. So even though they cause damage, they actually cause less damage than previously because we've got increased productivity efficiency.
We can talk about the environment another night because this is going to go down a massive rabbit hole, but
that's pretty much all I wanted to say there, really. But that's what the question he's asking. It's the same question that I would ask as well.
Yeah.
Because we're actually all libertarians here.
Oh, go up on the stage.
No,
don't know what
Not
they're
doing.
about.
The four people that
And I have not heard,
Scott's got no
I don't know how data centres are going to help climate change. Overall, we need a plan.
You don't understand tech, do you?
On our current emission
You don't understand
profile.
tech.
No, technology and the tech sector does help with climate change. Jacinda is the one who doesn't understand that.
Industrial revolution through to where we are now. What is burning? Less coal, less brown coal, less emissions. Now, obviously now it is.
It's the rising middle, and this is the rabbit hole, it's the rising middle classes in developing countries. Greta Thunberg was squealing at the wrong crowd.
You don't understand
We
technology.
need a
If
plan
you think it's a data
for
centre. You don't
transport,
understand.
industrial heat production, agriculture. Those are our major emissions.
Actually, I think I should take you to some text places. You'll understand they're not data centres.
Judith Collins, simple question for you. What does the word woke mean to you?
Oh, it actually means people who want to talk a lot of nonsense and actually never actually do it.
Bang on, Judith.
Beautiful.
Bang on. Well
Yeah.
done. Cheers to that. Go, Judith.
Huge self-awareness is what I would say. woke means.
All right.
I love that laugh.
It's lack of self-awareness. It's pointing the finger at everybody else and calling upon other people to make a sacrifice so you don't have to.
Just under another one for you. How will your government honour Te Tere o Waitangi?
By recognising that Te Tiriti is not just about treaty settlements. It has to be about the relationship between Māori and the Crown. It is a living document.
Yeah, they ceded their sovereignty. That's the relationship. We're done with this now. We can move on. I promise you can.
So we have to start looking beyond the treaty settlement process. We have to look at what we're doing to enrich and support the language, to support Māori culture and heritage, to teach our history in schools, to make sure we're supporting kohanga reo, to make sure we're supporting whānau order in health and in oranga tamariki.
Well, how come you...
More government intervention leads to dependence and poverty. We have ample evidence on this, and every time anyone in the government says these people need our help, they're only making things worse.
We actually need to make the Maori great again. Let's have a make the Maori great again. They used to be independent, and the socialists have forced them to be dependent on the government.
Okay, Winston. That's one thing.
I like wisdom.
That's the one. It's the one thing I'll agree on.
Yeah,
wisdom.
help the Marion Pacific Islanders who are struggling. Not just race based. Look, help poor people become more independent. That is the thing. You want to make people independent, not dependent.
It's how can they help themselves to not be poor? Not how can the government give them money to make them even less capable of being poor.
It isn't everything that we do.
So, of course, Ms. Ardern doesn't want to talk about treaty settlements because National had 56 deeds of settlement.
And again, as I say, it is about much
deeds. And by the way,
more.
They should not be bragging about how many. No,
don't brag about that, Judith.
Completely the wrong.
And going forward, what will you do?
Well, we'll continue to that part, but we'll also continue down the rigorous role that we had in trying to get kids through school to make sure that they got qualifications. And under us, level 2 NCEA for Māori rose from 52% to 75% after our term of government. That's what makes a difference, education.
It does.
This is an interesting one from Xavier Dickinson.
That's Megan Woods out there.
Judith Collins. New Zealand.
You'd be more welcome chipping in than Jerry Brownlee would be, I have to say.
Well, Jerry's a much better chippy than Megan Woods is.
Shut up, Judith. You lost that round.
He actually is one.
All right. Question from Xavier Dickinson. In New Zealand, our youth have significantly lower voting rates than those who are older. What will you do to ensure young New Zealanders get out and vote?
Do you know what I think?
You can't. It's their choice.
Best thing to do is show them we're having fun. If we're having fun in politics,
okay, I'll give you that.
They might want to actually get interested. I think that's really important.
And you're having fun?
I absolutely am. Every day, every single day.
Jacinda Ardern, our young people are not voting.
It's going to resonate with those people.
We have to do something about the things that are getting them to the polls. They want to see action on climate change.
They want to come.
They want us to continue to do work on child poverty. You know, when you go into schools, we make assumptions that young people care about things that are somehow only about youth adjacent issues. They care about the major things that are affecting the next generation. When they see us doing something about that, that makes them have faith in democracy. It makes them turn out. That's what we have to keep doing.
It all sounds nice, but if that were true, how come the youth don't vote?
Because they're lazy.
They're apathetic. They don't believe any political party that includes Labour are really out for their interests. They are
apathy if it's true. I don't think any political party is out for their best interests either, except ACT.
They feel hopeless and disenfranchised because they feel they have no control over the future anyway.
Actually, I would also say, given they're watching a Top video, I think Top intends to be out for the youth's future as well. I just think they missed the mark. That's all.
Well, a lot of them are very youthful. Joshua Love, etc.
He's independent. He
independent.
Yep, he left. I met him the other day.
Oh,
he left. He's become independent, and he became independent for exactly part of that reason. He wants to stand by himself. Good on him. Best of luck in Auckland Central. But probably only ACT and Top are actually looking out for this, and both of those parties have a genuinely very young crowd as part of it as well as a very old crowd at the high end too. I've seen lots of grey hairs on both sides, lots of young people on both sides as well. Make a choice. Come and vote. Get involved, guys.
Let's see if they can grab those votes, because the youth have not really turned out for anybody yet.
We have to do this fast. We have to actually by following through on what we promised.
Time for one more question. Jacinda Ardern, what will you do to work towards decreasing New Zealand's suicide rate?
We've got to go earlier and earlier with mental health support. You know, I still remember last election coming down and hearing some of the stories from children here in Canterbury and affected by the earthquakes in Kaikoura. And we heard from the educators and parents that we needed mental health support in primary schools. And so with the DHB, we created Mana Ake, and we have supported 5,000 children in schools right here in Canterbury. The sad reality is that we need that now across the country. We have to support our kids. We have to help them with tools in cognitive behavioral therapy that are going to give them what they need in the really tough world they're going into to not just survive, but to thrive. When we do that in our primary schools and we support it in our secondary schools, that is what will give us tough young adults who will survive the really anxious, making difficult times that we have in New Zealand.
Thank you.
Right. I think you need to identify why you're having these mental health problems earlier and earlier and earlier. And the answer is there is no path to progression. We have young people growing up in our country and all around the world who want to kill themselves because there's no escape. You are the ones that are responsible for this. You are the ones that are building dependency. There is no more independence. Go to school, do what you're told, fall in line, go to work, go to university, do what you're told by the boss. Where is the spirit of getting out there, starting your own thing and building your own thing? Most of the people that end up dropping out of high school and not going to university end up in the trades, and they quite often get to do their own thing. But what you're building is dependency. If you want to solve mental health in New Zealand as much as you possibly can, because a small fraction of the population is always going to have mental health problems, that's inevitable. If you want to reduce it as much as possible, you need to reverse what has been happening over the last 30 years, which is building of dependency on corporations and the state. Build your own things.
Hey, look, she's talking about a government program and there's a lot of bluster in that statement, but hey, if it's stopping people from killing themselves, if it's actually making a difference, I must in good faith support it or wish the best for it.
Thank you. Judith Collins, is that a good plan?
We believe that mental health is such an important issue that we should actually have a Minister for Mental Health. We've got Matt Ducey, who's the MP here in Waimakariri, and Matt is a mental health professional before he came to Parliament. I have to say, I'm sorry to say that Matt's actually had quite a lot of work to do in Parliament with mental health because, you know, Parliament is not immune to mental health issues, as we have seen. To me, that's why we're putting this big emphasis on mental health in schools. We agree with having real effort in that. But can I also say too, is that when we've got suicide rates of, the last time I checked, it was about 675. That's twice the road toll. And those...
It is actually twice the road toll. That's really bad, guys. It's both of your fault.
Aren't even counting all of the many cases of suicide attempts. But I'll tell you what, one of the things we did in...
Another grisly statistic that a lot of road accidents, especially single car crashes, are actually suicides. It's not provable beyond doubt, but when you have something like loss of control on a very basic corner at a high rate of speed, when there's a history of the driver's mental illness or suicide attempts, you can easily draw a conclusion.
The government that I would put straight back in is to have mental health workers working with the police in the custody suites, and that's something that Ms Ardern's government took out.
I don't know what that's.
No, they've taken out. They've gone.
Well, we'll let the fact checker pick that one up as well.
They've gone.
Yes and no answer. Yes and no on this. We've all got time for Jacinda Ardern. Universal basic income, good or bad?
No from us.
No from you.
It's a no from us. No.
All right. Thank you. Slightly tricky one. New Zealand has a
lack of imagination.
How will you look after their needs with every policy?
Evidence-based effect on
I'll tell you what we do think about that, which is why the tax cuts, which will give them $500 each for each superannuitant, because their superannuation is calculated at 66% of the after-tax average wage. So yeah, well, that's one thing. But also in terms of health, we've got to have the money to pay for health, which is why I say don't destroy our export economy, grow our export economy so that we can actually...
The best way to keep health services running is to fund health services, and for that you've got to have the money aside.
Yeah, that's right.
What I do for older New Zealanders, I won't move the retirement age. We've got to give them the certainty around what they can expect in their retirement. But also, I would just ask people to look at our record. We have, for instance, introduced the winter energy payment, and I cannot tell you how many letters I got from older New Zealanders saying for the first time they kept their heater on without thinking about it. That's what I want for our older New Zealanders.
Thank you, and thank you so much to our readers. That's the questions from our audience.
The factor we quote of prevention versus treatment.
Fifth and final section. Jacinda Ardern, Oranga Tamariki, during the last term of government, came under fire for its practice around uplifting babies that it considered at risk after footage emerged of a baby being taken from its mother at Hastings Hospital, which sparked a public shock. And a Children's Commissioner report found that newborn Māori babies were 5 times as likely to be taken into state care than non-Māori in 2019. There's been some work done in this area.
I am actually going to wait, because that's a very interesting way to frame that.
But what will you do specifically for Māori families to stop their babies being taken at higher rates?
Loaded question. Why are they being taken at higher rates?
That report that he referred to included such knee slappers as the officials of the Ministry for Children, I don't care what sort of newspeak name they call it to make us all think they've changed their ways or rebranded, but the personnel of the Ministry for Children failed to liaise with the parents, and somebody commenting on, I think, a Radio New Zealand article wrote a very insightful comment saying, well, they failed to liaise with the parents. Perhaps that's because these so-called parents weren't worth trying to liaise with.
Good question.
No one wants a child to ever be removed from a home. No one wants that situation. And I would think actually that that's where you would get some consensus. What we've got to do is work earlier. Too often, oranga tamariki are working in the most tragic of circumstances where things have become critical. We've got to work with...
So you just want to raise everybody's kids for them? I've got a big problem with that.
Our families much, much earlier on preventative measures so that whānau is supported so we never get to crisis. Recently, we've just started a rollout of a program with whānau Order that is an investment in doing just that. It will work with hundreds of families. And we continue to roll out partnerships with iwi. They're working to make sure that they're working with the whānau they know best, and that will make a difference too. Ultimately, we have a huge change program that started in 2019. It is going to take us some time to turn the ship around, but I'm very positive that we can do it.
So what's really important, as I think we can all agree, is that children should not be at risk in their own homes. And one of the things that we've put in place as a policy is the first 1,000-day policy. We've been criticised by some people for putting so much money and effort into children, all children in the first 1,000 days. But that's really important. That's actually about getting mothers the help that they need, the assistance they need. But also, let's be frank here. Social workers don't go running around trying to pick up kids out of homes because they're not needed to do. I am distraught every time I hear, yet again, of another child being killed or seriously injured in their home. And I'm never going to say to social workers at Oranga Tamariki, don't do your job because you're worried you're going to get a backlash. I tell you what, I don't want kids killed in their own homes or growing up frightened and beaten. It is simply not good enough, and I don't think any politician would ever wish that.
Children are not taken out of homes for no reason. It's important to remember that.
So your main concern would be making sure the children are safe, regardless of background?
Absolutely. Child always has to come first.
Well, I think everyone wants every child to be safe. But again, we have to start much, much earlier to turn around what has often been a whole host of issues over decades. So these won't be simple issues. So I don't think anyone either disagrees with investment in the first 1,000 days. You know, that's why we, for instance, extended pay.
I'm sorry, I definitely disagree with this amendment for the first 1,000 days. Why am I supporting other people's kids?
Parental leave to support families in those early years. It's why we brought in the Best Start payment, which is the first time since the 1990s we had
So don't listen to this, everybody. This is basically trying to twist the question into a bit of an advertisement.
A universal payment that recognised that in those early days, we need to support families to have the choice of being with their children. Unfortunately, the National Party is
These
proposing to
families
cut
are
their
generally,
start,
these
which will
families
be
are
a
generally not
real
working.
loss
Paid
for what I think
leave
is
doesn't make a
a significant change.
It doesn't make a scrap of difference. Paid parental leave to families who are not working. What we really do need to do is to put the effort in straight away with mothers and babies, and also
I
understand if you thought so much about it, Ms. Ardern, why'd you get rid of social investment? The single biggest effort that was being put in to help families through this and prevent children being harmed.
On whether or not we just heard Judith say that she doesn't believe in the extensions to paid
Now
parental leave.
that's not true. I said for families who are not working, it doesn't help to have paid parental
And Best
leave.
Start does, and you're planning to cut it.
We're putting in 1,000
Best Start matters to
days.
every family,
come on.
and you've
Come on,
proposed
Miss
cutting
Ardern.
it.
We've got the first 1,000 days is where the child is most going to get a benefit, and also the mother. It is really important to understand.
You both
some
agree on
things like-
first 1,000 days, disagree on how to do it.
Yep, I think
So
that's
let's move
fair.
on and turn to the cost of living. Now, what we're going to do is very quickly run through a quick fire round of questions to see how in touch both of these leaders are with some basic household items.
Oh, right. Okay.
Jacinda Ardern, how much is 2 litres of milk at the supermarket?
About $4.50.
Nah, $6.
At both New World and Countdown today, it was $3.40.
Oh, good deal.
$2, 2 litres.
Just what kind of rich supermarket are you shopping at?
2 litres.
That's
I
think we're getting ripped off.
That's the home brand.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Judith Collins, how much is a 2 kilo leg of lamb?
Ooh, 2 kilos.
You answer that one? 2 kilo leg of lamb.
Well, I don't buy lamb, I only buy steak.
I reckon it's about $27 a kg. Ish.
I'll say 35.
35ish? Yeah.
I'd probably, is that like that size?
Yeah,
is
like
it?
a leg.
That size? Oh, that's probably about $28. $30?
I would say about $20.
$42.
Oh, at least
Yeah, exactly. It's about fucking $25, $26 a kg.
I'm closer.
My metric.
I've got to say,
Jesus, where are you getting your lamb from, Jacinda? I want to know who does that.
I normally buy when it's on sale.
Nothing in that household.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think you have to get on with it.
Special.
Jacinda Ardern, how much does the cheapest Netflix plan cost per month?
I believe it's 11.
I know I'm paying 18 something, 18.90, but I'm on the top tier one. I think it is about $10, $11.
$99.
Judith Collins?
Yeah, it's about that. And I could tell you I haven't watched any lately. I've been too busy.
You are both correct. Congratulations. How much is a weekday edition of The Press? Judith?
Do you know?
A weekday edition,
Oh,
it'll
the
be
press.
$1.80.
$1.80? Yeah, something like that.
Judith Collins.
Too much. Jerry Brownlee says.
Lovely.
Jerry says it's too much.
Jacinda Ardern.
I don't know.
$2.80. Now, a couple of salary
We
questions.
get ours online. don't
Jacinda Ardern, what is a starting primary teacher's salary?
A starting
48.
I think it's less than that. I think it's like 43.
You're probably wrong.
Why, we'll find out in a second, won't we? Hold on.
primary teacher is in the, since our increases,
Come
the
on.
late 40s, my recollection.
And it's about that. And after about 3 years, I think it's about 63, something like that.
It's about 49,800
To start with, but after 3 years. it's
And
about
Judith
63.
Collins, what's the starting salary of a registered nurse?
It's less than that.
I thought it was more than that because they're registered nurses, they're medical trained professionals. I thought they were in the low 50s, low to mid 50s. Because I know a more experienced nurse, senior, sort of after 3 to 5 years, I think is now senior nurses. They're up in the mid 60s because that's what Judith Collins is getting the test cut at 64.
It depends on the grade they are. Once they get to 5 or 6 or 7, they're higher.
Starting, what do you reckon? 50 something.
Well, they're talking about a low level or a registered one.
Registered nurse.
Is there a difference? I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose there's training nurses, which will be mid to low 40s, and I
Yeah.
think fully registered, I think you're picking just over 50. I'm guessing at this point, but there you go. This is my
55.
guess. 55. Let's go 55.
It's not much more than that. It's in the 50s.
Jacinda Ardern?
I know that after a couple of years you get up into the early
You can get up to
60s.
60s, 70s.
$54,000.
It is higher than the primary.
Bang on the money. 54,000, early 50s. There we go.
To the government's careers webpage. Now, we're going to move on to housing, and we have a video question from one of our readers about the state of New Zealand's housing market.
Hi, I'm David from LJ Hooker Ponsonby. House prices in Auckland are currently 8.6 times the median income, 6.8 in Wellington, 5.4 in Christchurch, and 7 times in Dunedin. I've seen multiple first-time buyers struggle to cross the line. My question to you is, will you reduce house prices, and how will you go about doing so?
Jacinda Ardern.
We have to increase supply. That's how we make a difference, no matter where you are in the country, to house prices. Very different discussions around how we do it between the political
What are you going to
parties.
do? Give us your quick bullet points of your top 3 things you're going to do to increase housing supply.
We've got to make sure that our residential developers are still building. So things like our underwrite scheme through COVID will make sure we don't have what we had during the GFC, which was a dip. We will continue to support progressive home ownership, and we will continue with Kiwi Build. We will also continue to build. We will also continue to build state houses to rebuild the stock that we lost under national. And finally, the urban policy the national policy statement.
It's a very outdated argument. A lot of these state houses that have been completed under Labor, especially for the first year and a half, were moved.
The national policy statement on urban development is the planning tool that will make a difference to councils across the country. It says you need to build up and out if you have the infrastructure. We've also supported the financing to do that too.
Number one, get rid of the RMA. Number one thing.
Very good.
Second, we will not waste taxpayers' money and people's hopes on Kiwi Build. There should be 16,000 homes now, according to Ms Ardern from last election. In Kiwi Build, there's 585 last time I checked. That's a shame. We've got houses built at Pegasus that can't sell, and by the way, they're not good enough to be able to fit into the State House dimensions that they're supposed to have.
Now, Cindy walked right into that, because for the last few months they have been trying their best to pivot away from Kiwi Build and not to advertise it because they knew it had been a failure. So that's a free kick to Ms Collins.
Also, by the way, at Wanaka, all these houses built, no one to buy them.
Your policies?
We're not going to do that. So happy to talk to you. I've just said you get rid of the RMA. The other thing is we'll do what we did in Christchurch, and that was to actually do mass consenting, get houses built. We ended up with a situation in Christchurch where, until actually a change of government, the house prices had actually stabilised. And they've gone up 13% in the last year.
9 years and no changes to the RMA.
Actually, we did make changes. I don't know where you were those days.
The state housing stock.
No, that's
9 years, and they allowed foreign buyers to continue to buy our houses.
And what's
9
happened?
years.
And what's happened?
And they did not close
and
the tax loophole.
Where do you stand on foreign people buying New Zealand houses?
Well, they don't allow it in a lot of other countries because they don't want it to have, and it has a disproportionate effect on the market. A lot of people were claiming, falsely actually, because a lot of the dodgy dealings that real estate agents were making were not recorded in the official statistics, but a lot of people were saying that, oh, so what, foreign buyers only make up about 5% of the market. It doesn't bloody matter. Foreigners have an enormous amount of money, far more than the average New Zealander. So even if they only account for about 5% of the market, the impact they have on house prices is profound. So no, I don't think foreign nationals should own and or definitely be able to invest in property in New Zealand.
I agree. There is only one test for me. Are you a citizen? If you're a citizen, you can buy land here. If you're not, I don't really give a shit what you think, because you're not a citizen.
And if you think that's xenophobic, go and say that to Xi Jinping.
Not xenophobic. Anyone can become a citizen of New Zealand.
You can't, a citizen of New Zealand can't go over to China and buy property. You can't go over to the Philippines and buy property. You can buy a house, but the land belongs to the Filipino government and they can take it back from you at market rates if ever they please.
Which technically we can do here with the right of eminent domain. We just don't use it like that. But the test should be, are you a citizen? If you're a citizen, which anyone can be, so it is not xenophobic, anyone can become a New Zealand citizen. If you're a citizen, then you may purchase land. If you're not, I don't care what you think.
Unfortunately, that horse has already bolted several years ago. It was National who didn't do anything about it. And now we're looking at $550 for a house in an undesirable suburb if you don't want to pay an enormous amount of money for an apartment in Auckland.
For speculators, 9 years equals a housing crisis
that's not
that
true.
we are still trying to turn around.
Even if, Jacinda Ardern, even if house prices stabilised, compared to wages growth, it will take decades for houses to come back to something like 3 times the median income. Is it acceptable to wait for decades?
No, it's not.
Then why haven't you done anything?
That is why we have to use every tool. It's not just about planning. It's also about helping first home buyers get over the deposit hurdle. And we've done that by adjusting our home loan support schemes. It's about things like progressive home ownership that also gets over those barriers.
She's talking about the 5% deposit. This has a major flaw. And it's simply to do with the fact that if you only put down 5% to buy a house, the principal you're paying off and the interest you're paying on that is absolutely friggin' ridiculous. So really, it does lowering that deposit from 20% to 5% in the long run actually means people pay more.
Just stop interfering with the market. Stop interfering with the regulations, stop interfering with LVR. Banks will not loan to people who have a very bad credit history and have a very low likelihood of paying off their loan. They won't do it. It's a bad business decision.
It's what caused the subprime mortgage crisis in 2008 at the end of the day. Have we learned nothing?
Look, how can you a decade-long problem we are not going to fix in when 3 years.
But I am not going to give up trying and making sure home buyers access our housing market.
4 times.
It's not a decade-long problem. She's referring, of course, to National overseeing it. House prices have been increasing massively since the early 1990s. And for the first part of that 20-year period, 20 years or so, it was under the Labour government.
Extremely
4
disingenuous.
times.
The day that they
waiting list when we left office was 5,000 families. Now we're almost 20,000 families. 20,000 families are waiting for a home under Miss Ardern. 20,000 people needing state assistance.
And how
can
you
she
sell?
even mention it? And when I look at it, they've built 5,000 state houses, actually all consented, started, funded under us. By the way, she's got nothing left in the tank. She's got nothing left in the tank.
The fact is going to be very busy.
The fact she's got Phil Twyford and Kiwi Will come
housing
on.
unaffordability has continued to go up under every and national government.
Which I did think you found some agreement on some points, which was heartening. We are now just going to have time for your closing statements. Judith Collins, you've got 2 minutes.
Right, this is the most important election in a generation. We are going to need to think much further out than just the election date. We have to think about our kids and our grandkids. We've got a fiscal plan from us that gets us back to a reasonable level of debt at 36% by the year 2034. We've got a pamphlet from Miss Ardern's party that actually has no pathway back out of massive debt. And that debt needs to be, which we know we're going to need to borrow, it needs to be about building our economy. It needs to be about building houses, building infrastructure, building the roads we need, and not having this talk about whether or not it's public transport or private transport. It should be both.
And for people in the rural and provincial New Zealand, actually private transport is going to be part of the solution. And yes, we will have to toll some big roads, but people don't mind because they're getting there faster. And by the way, they have choice. That is important to do. In Auckland, it's about putting the second harbour crossing under Auckland in 2 tunnels, one for trains and the other one for roads and buses, because most public transport is by buses, and they, strangely enough, run on roads. It is absolutely important too that we boost the economy by giving people some more choice, to giving them some more of their own money back. And we can do that because we have a plan. And that's one of the problems with Miss Ardern's party. They're very ready to point holes and pick holes in our plan, but their own plan is basically non-existent. One of the things I'd like to ask Miss Ardern, and anyone should ask, is what's the cost of the light rail in Auckland? She's talking about $1.8 billion as a seed money. Actually, what's the actual cost? We know what it is. It's probably more $6-8 billion, or Winston Peters says 15. We can't afford that sort of laissez-faire, leave it all alone, don't worry about it, just throw the money around. This is not monopoly money. It's money our kids and grandkids have to pay back. Vote National Party vote.
Thank you, Judith Collins.
Don't vote
And the final 2 minutes goes to
MP
you,
vote.
Prime Minister.
Look, this evening, no matter how short-lived the unity moments may have been, I consider New Zealand very lucky, and all of us very lucky to be here. And in amongst the debate that you've heard tonight, really the question we're facing this election does boil down to a very simple one. Who's better placed to keep New Zealand safe, and who's better placed to get us on track to recovery? Now, you've seen what the Labour team have delivered during COVID-19, and you've seen where it's landed us relative to the rest of the world. Now, we didn't get those results by chance. As a government, we made decisions and had a plan. We went hard and we went early. When issues cropped up, we fixed them. Everyone has played a role in that success. But of course, now, together, we've set ourselves on a strong recovery. Now we need to make the most of that economic head start. And there is too much at stake to risk political disruption and a change of direction. When parties are focused on themselves, they can lose sight of what really matters. Right now, we need strong, stable government and a clear path forward. That's what I'm offering, and that's what Labour's offering. Now, we're already rolling out our plan for the economy. It's about getting jobs going through infrastructure. It's about training apprentices for tomorrow's jobs. It's about supporting small businesses to grow and to innovate. And it's about supporting our environment too, all while keeping us safe while scientists work on vaccinations. Together, over the past few years, we have cleared, and you have cleared, some really high hurdles. My hope is one day we'll look back on this period and know that we built the foundations for New Zealand to be better and stronger. Your vote's a chance to cement that. So let's stick together and let's keep moving.
I'm happy to call it there.
I think so. Any thoughts?
I can see why people found it disappointing compared to the other debates. I can see why that is the current opinion. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of the closing remarks. There's a lot of similarities now. Jacinda is coming out and saying more capitalist things at the moment. She wants to build the economy. She's talking about supply and demand, things that have probably been hit on quite a lot. She's talking about those kind of things now, which she didn't do in the last couple of debates. So yeah, I approve of those kind of things. But I know where this is coming from. It's just lies. She hasn't done anything for the last 3 years. She's definitely not going to do anything for the next 3 years. And there's the same old Marxist lies that we're always going to see from people who are literal communists. She won't be able to do it. She can't do it. She lacks the expertise. She has no fiscal knowledge. She has no economic knowledge. She has absolutely no idea what she's doing. You vote for Labour, you're voting for destroying the country. Having said that, Judith, can you be a little bit more strong on some of these points, actually? Can you stop trying to be a little bit of Labour-like? Can you stop with all these rubbish social policies? If Jacinda says, where are you going to get the money from? You bloody start telling people where you're going to get the money from. You're going to get it from all these little special interest groups that the Taxpayers Union keeps pointing out that are getting hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in funding, millions of dollars of funding, hundreds of millions of dollars of funding that is going towards wage subsidy, which is delaying the inevitable collapse from the COVID rubbish that Labour put us into in the first place.
At this point, Judith, you can only ever be the voice of reason.
Get it together.
All you have to be, get it together. And that's really all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I think that's, I could waffle on for the next half an hour because that's what I do. I love it.
Let's not do that. We got to get to bed, but we'll see you next week. We will have an election special and we'll tell you exactly who we're going to vote for a start.
Well, I think that's fairly obvious, but thank you very much for our two top partners that joined us in the bottom of the screen, albeit unwillingly. That was very kind of you.
Remember, guys,
I don't care who you vote for. Just get out there and have your vote, please.
Can't complain if you don't do it.
See you later.
See ya.
Take care.